Welcome to the High Vibe Soul Podcast, a space where we discuss personal growth, spirituality, motherhood, relationships, and shifting old paradigms so that you can live your most authentic, soul-aligned life. I'm your host, Lyndsey, and I founded the High Vibe Soul Company to empower women and support them in becoming their highest, brightest selves. From my light to yours, I am so grateful you're here. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is all about navigating school anxiety and perfectionism because they're very much intertwined for a lot of people, a lot of children as well. And I'm going to share our whole story with my oldest son, Hudson, who's about to be 8, and how we navigated his year and a half almost of school anxiety, how we're still working through perfectionism for him and myself, if I'm being honest. I feel like I'm always going to be a recovering perfectionist. It's definitely very woven into who I am as a firstborn and with the circumstances I grew up in. And I'm doing my best to help mitigate that with Hudson at a much younger age where he doesn't have to figure it all out on his own. But yeah, so I'll share our whole story. I honestly never thought I'd be here right now. At the time, it was really, really dark. Really, really dark as a mom. And for Hudson, seeing this amazing, I'm gonna get emotional right now, this amazing bright little light, and going from pre-K where he was just thriving to thinking okay, going into a bigger school system, going into public kindergarten, it's gonna be an adjustment. But I had no idea how hard that was gonna be for him. And he needed to go through it for his own growth. And maybe I needed to go through that as well on my end as a parent for my growth. And perhaps, I hope we don't have to go through this with our girls. But if we do, I now have the tools in place where I know what to do. And I'm happy to share this with all of you. But it was really, really hard. I'll just kind of give you how it started, and then I'll share how we handled it. We were always in a sweet little, local preschool. He was never in daycare or anything like that. So he'd only ever been at school from 9 to 1. And his classes were always, I want to say, I don't even know, 12 kids, maybe 15 max. Our preschool always had the kids going in and out all day. They would do nature walks, they would eat lunch outside. They got a lot of outdoor time. They did a good job blending in some traditional elements as well, for sure. But it was a lot of play-based learning, which is how it should be. Our school systems have just gone so far into academics that now they're really launching kids into straight up learning without so much play in kindergarten. And I didn't realize that necessarily until we started. So part of the reason we moved to where we're at now is the school system. We have 3 kids and we didn't want to pay for private school. It's not part of our financial plan. And so we always said we'd do public school. I went to public school my whole life, and people always I went to public school. I turned out great. I actually think public school can be so beneficial because you're in a more diverse group of kids. You're in a bigger group of kids as well versus a smaller private school. And so that was the plan. And I knew it would be an adjustment because of Hudson always being in a small preschool and the hours, but also because, and you should look at this if you don't know for your child, his human design, he's a projector. And projectors, they can only go a few hours at a time before they need a massive break. That's just kind of how their energy is designed. And so I had a feeling that would be difficult for him. I knew he was going to be super tired at the end of the school day. It's a long day. It's 7 hours. And it's just a huge adjustment. It's all these new kids, new teachers, new way of everything, and a lot more sitting and not being outside so much. So I knew there were going to be a lot of factors that would be hard for him. But I figured He's a very resilient child. He's very much like that firstborn leader type. And I was like, he'll be good. Like, I'm really not too worried about him. I think it'll be like a month adjustment. Oh, I was wrong. So actually, the first month and a half of school was probably our best month of kindergarten. And I came to find out later from my friend, Dr. Alaina Puff, that usually the kids, it's like that first month, month and a half, that's like everything's new and kind of even exciting, and they're just getting in their groove. And then after that, that's when the school anxiety hits usually. So it usually doesn't hit till like a month or two in. And that's exactly what happened with Hudson. We start school beginning of August. It hit him like late September. Hudson would have these crazy tantrums. And it was very unlike him. Like, he hadn't had tantrums like that since he was 2 years old. And we were like, whoa, what is going on? He would just scream and cry and yell and be like, I don't want to go to school. And sometimes it would be in the morning. Sometimes it would be the night before. But it just became very, very frequent. He'd also get home from school and he'd just have like a rage escapade where he'd just go off on everybody, just like yelling and just letting out all this emotion that he'd been holding in all day. And I knew that's what was happening, but it's still so hard to handle that and keep your cool. And also it's really hard because I'm like, you cannot just go around screaming at your sisters either. Like, they're very sensitive and they start crying, and there's this whole thing. He would just cry about everything. He was like, I hate sitting all day. School's boring. I want to be outside. And we're a big nature family. Like, that would be it's very, very hard for all the kids if they don't get outside. And I knew that was going to be an issue. But it was just like everything. And then he also said, it's too loud. Everyone's so loud. And he's very sensitive to noise, is like his big sensitivity, I would say. And I get it because that's one of my big sensitivities too. And so he was really struggling with that. And so I did talk to his teacher, and I realized the more I got to know her, I was like, oh, this is not ideal, because she was new to teaching kindergarten. Fine, whatever. They have an assistant teacher who is amazing. She's like older mom vibes, just very comforting for him. And he really gravitated towards her. But his head teacher, I could feel her anxiety. And I was like, oh no, this is not good, because Hudson's obviously feeling that too, on top of feeling everyone else's stuff, all the things, right? And so that was an issue. And what am I supposed to do about that? Like, how do I help her calm down, So that was not ideal. And then Hudson started having these tummy aches, and it was frequent. It was like almost every day. But then on the weekends, they were pretty much gone. And then he started going to the school nurse. And at first it was like once a week, then twice a week. And it just kept going up. At one point it was 4 times a week. He would go to the school nurse, and his teacher would just let him. She very rarely was like, no, you need to stay in the classroom. She would just let him go to the school nurse. And at first I was like, oh, he's not feeling good. And they would, they always call you when they go to the school nurse. And the nurse would say, he doesn't have a fever. I gave him some water. I'm letting him rest right now. And do you want to pick him up, or do you want him to go back to school? And at first I was like, oh gosh, like, I'll come pick him up. And then it became so frequent. I was like, I cannot keep picking him up. This is not doing him any favors. And then it was just sad because I'd get on the phone with him and he'd start crying when he realized I wasn't going to pick him up. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to do what my mom did with me, which I had really bad school anxiety. I would say high school more than anything, but middle school too. Not so much elementary, but I had horrible anxiety in high school. I mean, I would get the Sunday scaries like it was my job. It was awful. I would just work myself into this, like, stressed out to the point of tears. And my mom would be like, okay, you can just go in at lunchtime, or like, okay, because I was a good student. So like, she knew I'd make up the work. She'd be like, okay, or let's just take a mental health day and you can get the work tomorrow. And so she would do that for me a lot. And so that was kind of in the back of my head, like, oh, I used to take these mental health days. I'll just do that with Hudson. That'll refill his cup. And then he'll go back to school and like feel so much better. Yeah, no. Now looking back, I'm like, that was a terrible idea, because then he just wanted to spend more time with me. Like, he basically was like, I want to homeschool, And I don't have the capacity. I thought about it so many times, and I have some friends at homeschool, and they're freaking amazing. I don't have that capacity in me. I need a lot of alone time, and I need a lot of time to be creative and work on my business. And I just knew like where my business was heading. And now I'm like, thank God, because I do so many sessions, there's no way. But I knew where my business was heading. I don't have the capacity to homeschool. It would have to be one or the other. I couldn't do both. And so I had to just like let that idea go, even though my husband was like, yeah, you could do that. Like he'd probably love it. He would, but it wouldn't do him or me any favors. So that was kind of where we were at midway through the year. I'd say around January or February. It was just so bad. I'm like crying every day taking him to school because he's crying. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And so I'm like, okay, what else can I do? I've talked to his teacher. I don't want to talk to the principal because I don't want to throw the teacher under the bus. And our principal, oh my gosh, luckily she's gone now, but I would call her the ice queen. That's putting it nicely. Like she's known to make parents and teachers cry. And so I'm sure she was contributing to this teacher's anxiety because I heard that she would just go off on teachers about everything and there was no praise. I couldn't talk to the principal. So I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I had done so much research on my own. I'm like up all night, every night, just like researching how to navigate your child's anxiety, which is also so interesting because I had so much anxiety up until early 30s, mid 30s, early to mid 30s. Really, once I became a mom, I had to start doing somatic work. If you've listened to my episodes, you know, journaling, mindfulness. I started meditating finally. I learned energy healing. I finally got all the tools for my toolkit to navigate anxiety and being an empath. And one big thing is like learning to clear your energy. Like that's huge. So much anxiety wasn't even mine. It's so interesting that I was navigating this as a parent who had worked through all my own anxiety. And now it's like, no, not this, not my child. Like, how does that happen? You know? So I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I'm at the point where I'm like, he just needs to get pulled out of the school. Like, fine, we can finish the year, but then like he's done. We cannot do this school anymore. This is not the right environment for him. I just wanted to just pull him out and get him back in like a small, sweet environment and just save him. I wanted to save him basically. And my husband's actually quite intuitive. He would laugh hearing this if he listens to this episode. He'd be like, whatever, Lyndsey, because he's very, very grounded, but he has a wonderful intuition. And sometimes if we don't meet eye to eye, I'm like, wait, one of our intuitions is off. At the time, I was like, I'm right. My intuition is correct. It wasn't my intuition speaking at all. It was my fear. It was absolutely my fear. My fear was clouding everything. It was clouding my judgment completely. But at the time, I'm like, we need to pull him. And my husband fought me on it. And I was like, I'm just going to start touring other schools because we can't do this anymore. And so I toured so many different school options. I really fell in love with this one Montessori school, and I toured it like a few times. I even took Hudson in for I don't know what they call it. It's like basically they kind of see if the child would be a right fit. And he loved it, of course. He was like, wait, what do you mean we just get to do like projects and like we can kind of do our own thing? And I mean, he would thrive in a Montessori environment 100%. But my husband was like, Lyndsey, this is not part of our financial plan. This is really going to set us back. Also, if we do Montessori for him, like then I feel like we have to do it for the other two. But do you think that would even be a right fit for both of them? And I'm like, I actually don't know if it would because they're all so different. And so we had all these questions. So we're going back and forth. Fast forward to summertime. And I'm like, I got to make a decision in June on this Montessori school. And my husband's like, can we please just give him one more year? Okay. He goes, I talked to one of my friends and they were saying their kindergartner had a really hard time. It's so hard for boys to sit still, especially. And they said first grade was so much better. And they said, can we just give him one more year? Like he's grown and changed a lot. And I'm like, okay, fine. So that summer we had an amazing summer. I mean, my bright little light, he was back. And it was really, really good to see. But it also scared me because I'm like, okay, that school in my head, I'm like, that school was dimming his light and I cannot have that. And so I'm like, okay, what can I do? So I prayed and I prayed. I meditated on it. I prayed on it. And I just prayed for the right teacher. I prayed for the highest outcome. And this is a little trick I'll share. Sometimes we think we know the highest outcome. We think we know how things are supposed to go. Often our little human mind doesn't know. So instead of praying for a specific outcome, just pray for the highest outcome. It always works out. I also filled out this form that our school does. I'm so grateful they do this at the end of every year, towards the end. You put in what kind of child do you have? Like, what do you want them to know about your child? And then what kind of teacher do you believe they need? And they take your input, they take the teacher's input from that year, and then somebody else's input. And that's how they do the classes. They really think these classes through. We didn't have that luxury going into kindergarten. They don't do that, but it was great because they did that going into first grade. So I'm like, give me the most empathic, sensitively attuned, sweet, kind, loving, attentive teacher that you have. That's all I care about. And I just really made it clear on that sheet. And I think that was very, very helpful. So let's fast forward to last year, and we're in beginning of August, and we're going to meet the teacher day, and I'm walking in the school with Hudson, and I'm like shaking. I'm so nervous to meet her because I am so energetically sensitive. Like, I can pick up on someone's energy like that, and I know right away like what their vibe is. And so I'm like, please, please, God, like, let this be a good fit. Let this year go well. And I'm still thinking in the back of my head, we're still going to pull him after this year. That was where I was going, but I just wanted it to be a smoother year. So Hudson and I walk in together, and I meet her, and within 30 seconds, I am full blown crying. I am like, oh my gosh, she's an angel. She hugs me. I'm telling her what a hard year we had last year. I'm filling her in on Hudson. I mean, she's so wonderful. And picture this, there's like 30 other parents, not 30, but like 20 other parents walking around as I'm like crying to this teacher who doesn't know me at all. And now she would probably laugh at it, and I would laugh. I'm laughing at it, but it was kind of embarrassing. But whatever, like, I am someone who walks around with my heart on my sleeve. I'm very sensitive, and my sensitivity is my superpower. So I'm crying, and I'm like, okay, thank you, God. Like, I feel really, really good about this. Finally, I feel like there's hope. And I told Hudson, I go, I will do everything in my power to make sure this is the best year yet. And so I'm thinking, like, what else can I do? And I feel like I need to talk to the principal. As much as I don't want to, his teacher from last year, she's gone. So I don't feel like I'd be throwing her under the bus anymore. But I want to talk to her about how can we make this a more nurturing environment for our children. And like I said, I'd heard all the stories. I knew about her, but I'm like, maybe it'll be different when we have this sort of heart to heart. It was not different. I walk up to our meeting, and she's dressed super cute. She's got this super cute dress on, and I'm like, oh, I love your dress. And she's just like, come with me. And I looked at the secretary. I was like, oh shit, it's going to be one of those meetings. Okay. And so we sit down, and I just share what happened last year, and I'm in tears per usual. And she just looks at me and goes, well, why didn't you bring this to my attention sooner? And I go, oh, well, because I didn't want to throw Hudson's teacher under the bus, I didn't want to be like, because I know how you are. I mean, it was awful. I feel like I did it in a very diplomatic way, but I was like, what if we got the children outside more? Like, nature is shown to reduce stress and da-da-da. I gave her all these like different stats and things. And I had talked to my friend who has worked with school systems in the past. And so she was giving me some good talking points. And I felt like I came in really prepared. And honestly, she just looked at me like I was a complete idiot. And it was really degrading. And I walked out of there, and I got in my car, and I burst into tears. And I understood now why the environment there felt a little bit off. It made sense. I'll just tell you now, she's left at the end of last school year. After there was some crazy stuff, there was like a petition going around to get her to leave. I mean, so many teachers had cited her as the reason that they were leaving. Great teachers. And they would just go to like a neighboring school. It's not like they were moving. And she finally retired. I mean, I don't know if she got pushed out or what, but the school feels so much better when you walk in. Like the environment, the secretary's happy. It feels so much better. So I feel like, again, prayers have been answered since this all started. So going back to now first grade. So I'm thinking this is going to be such a different year. I'm so excited. I'm really pumping Hudson up. I'm like, this is going to be such a good year, Hudson. You're in first grade now. Your teacher's amazing. And he's like, yeah. A month and a half goes by, and I start getting those calls from the school nurse. And granted, he was not coming home and having these big explosions anymore, but he did just seem a little bit sad, I guess I would call it, or just like off. Just kind of like, this is my life now, I guess, when he would get home. And you don't want to see that either. And so I started getting the calls from the school nurse. And I'm like, I've got to figure this out. We can't do this. And so I am going through all of my resources. And I realized, oh my gosh, why have I not talked to my friend who is a therapist for highly sensitive children? I just never crossed my mind. Why? I have no idea. Maybe because the timing wasn't right. So I set up an appointment with Dr. Alaina Puff, who I will link in the show notes. And then I also realized that my friend Michelle, she primarily is like a spirit baby communicator. If you're like pregnant or wanting to get pregnant, she talks to the babies that are on the other side and helps the moms just know what they need to know. It's really, really cool. I find out she's actually also starting to do sessions where she is talking to children's souls, their higher selves, like children that are here. So I have actually a meditation on this. I can do this with my own children, but every time I would sit down and try to do it, I was so emotional, I was completely blocked. I couldn't get any information, and I couldn't really connect with his soul in that way. And so I'm like, okay, I got to set up an appointment with her. So those were the two people that really stood out, and I am so grateful. I'll link Michelle in the show notes too. So first I had my appointment with Michelle, and Michelle uncovered in talking to Hudson's higher self that his school environment, I thought for sure she'd be like, yeah, he needs to go to this Montessori school that you toured and you're spot on. No. She was like, his school environment, his soul is saying his school environment is actually really beneficial because this is going to teach him to move through being an empath and being around a lot of people at a young age. So actually his higher self wants him there. And I was like, oh, okay, that actually makes so much sense, because if I pull him and put him in this small environment, at some point he's going to have to learn to be around more people, because I see it with him. He's very much meant to lead people. I see him working with like a lot of people one day. And so I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. She also told me, write all this down, because in a few months it'll be so far past you won't remember most of it. And I laughed. I was like, yeah, I wish. Like, in what universe? So that was the beginning of my appointment with Michelle. And I'm just going to kind of bounce back and forth. And I'm going to share my appointment with Michelle and then also my appointment with Dr. Puff and kind of go back and forth because it's all intertwined. So Dr. Puff is a therapist for highly sensitive, highly intuitive children. And so her session, I'm thinking we're just going to dive all into Hudson. No, her session was actually more about me and my husband, which really surprised me, but actually made so much sense by the end. So what both Michelle and Dr. Puff uncovered for me is that the school nurse visits were really twofold. So his body was just escaping the discomfort of the chaos around him. He was feeling really overstimulated, because he's an empath and he just soaks in everything like a sponge, including all the other emotions around him. And like Dr. Puff had a great example where she said she does this with kids that come into her office, where it's like, you're sitting at your desk and one child over here is sad because their dog died and she like threw a stuffed animal. And one child over here is mad because their parents are getting divorced. And one child over here is like really excited and really happy to be there. And she's just like throwing stuffed animals, like throwing their energy around, right? And think of all those different energies hitting your little child who's never been in an environment like that. It is a lot. Michelle was like the school nurse, has major mom vibes. She has a really calm, kind of zen environment that feels safe for him. And she goes, actually, it feels a lot like your house. But that is him trying to get in the energy of feeling like he's at home. And that's what he's used to at home. Versus, she said, a lot of these other kids, they don't come from these calm households. They come from more of like a chaotic house, or they're used to being in daycare all day where it's just busy and loud, and it's just very, very different. Then this actually went hand in hand with the anger that he was experiencing, which I already kind of had picked up on this. He was like holding in all this emotion, and it had to get out. What they uncovered is that he was actually taking us to an argument. He was doing it on purpose to let out that energy. Like he was trying to create an argument because he didn't know how else to let it out. And then this was really fascinating. Once Dr. Puff and I got deeper into everything, I was saying, he really, really takes it to an argument with my husband more than anyone. Like he just is like poking my husband and trying to trigger him. And she said, yeah, that makes perfect sense. She said, Dad is a mirror for him. And around the age of 7 or 8, especially, is when boys really start to mirror their father, or like their father figure in their life. And when girls really start to mirror their mother or their mother figure. And then around like age 14, that's when friends really come in and they affect them way more than the parents. So like that's our window, guys. But Hudson was really trying to, one, get out all this excess emotion, but then it was twofold. He was like, how will Dad handle this when I yell at him? He wanted to see what kind of reaction he would get because Dad's his mirror. So ultimately, this was an opportunity we realized for my husband too. So it's like, how can he be, excuse me, how can he be as regulated as possible? Can he show Hudson, your feelings aren't too big. Like I can handle any feelings you want to throw at me. Your feelings are not too big. I'm here. I'm your safe space. And how can he handle this situation with grace and really do things differently than his dad did, which ultimately is really, really healing for the inner child. If you're in this situation, this can be so healing to, if you have parents that never allowed you to express your emotions, or you would scream and yell and they would tell you, go to your room. That was really common in, the 90s parenting style. And it can be really, really healing for our inner children to let our kids express emotion, let them even, rage, whatever, and just be this safe anchor space. It also really increases your capacity to handle stress. Like Hudson, when he was, I want to say 1.5, no, maybe 2 years old, he would have these crazy tantrums. And all my kids have done this at some point, but I just very vividly remember it because he's my firstborn. He would wake up from a nap and he'd just be pissed for no reason. And I'd be like, does he need something to drink? Does he need food? Does he want me here? Does he not want me here? Does he need low light? Does he need bright light? Does he need music to wake up? I mean, I tried everything, but most of the time he would just wake up and he'd just scream. It was the wildest thing. I still don't fully understand it. And so I would just have to sit there. And it was so hard for me because I'd never dealt with that before. I just had to sit there and be the anchor, and I just like be deep breathing, closing my eyes. Sometimes I would walk away and come back. I mean, it was brutal. But what I realized later is he really increased my capacity to hold space for big feelings, to hold space for big energy, big emotions, big anything. Like he increased my capacity. He really helped me learn how to regulate my nervous system. I mean, ultimately it was such a gift that he used to do that. But you'll see this too if you don't have multiple kids. Like if you have more kids, you'll notice like I'm so much more chill with the second one or the third one. Yeah, because your capacity to hold space has increased. And you've probably had to teach yourself how to regulate your nervous system in like really serious ways if you've had a toddler, especially, or I hear teenagers. So anyways, it can be really, really healing for our inner children to let our kids just like express their emotion and hold space for them and just be the parent. Like for my husband, it was like he gets to be the parent that he wishes he had when he was a young, sensitive boy. And like big feelings were not acceptable. And being a little boy that cried was not acceptable for his dad. And that's really, really sad to think about now, but now he gets to do things differently. Also, we realized with both sessions, anxiety, rage, and the tummy aches all related to perfectionism. And this is something that Dr. Puff really was helping me with. Because again, like I was so shocked in my session with her, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be all about Hudson. No, it's pretty much all about me and my husband. So as a firstborn, we can accidentally put pressure on our kids to be the model. And this pressure can manifest in anxiety. And so one thing Dr. Puff suggested is I need to continue healing my perfectionism. So like we were kind of talking about our daily routine. And I was saying, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely one of those people where like my environment affects me so much. So I have to have everything cleaned up at the end of the day before the kids go to bed because I just want to chill after they go to bed. And she goes, well, what if you just didn't do that? And I'm like, I'd feel very stressed. And she goes, well, but just try it. Show the kids that everything doesn't have to be perfect. She said, even make mistakes like on purpose, like spill something on the floor and be like, oops, mommy made a mistake. She goes, show the kids that you are not perfect and show them that making mistakes is normal and totally acceptable. She goes, also share when you make a mistake or share when something embarrassing happens to you, which I've been doing. And I do think that made a big difference actually with Hudson. Michelle uncovered for Hudson in terms of the feeling like worried or anxious. She goes, he really wants to make you and your husband proud. And he really just wants to like maintain this status of like mom and dad are so proud of me. So she said, instead of praising him for like all the amazing things that he does, just praise him just for being him, which we do. We have this little saying, and I say it a lot more now, but it's from a book where I'll be like, I love you when you're happy. I love you when you're mad. I love you when you're grumpy and even when you're sad. I love you all the time, no matter how you are. I love you because you're my little superstar. They take it in, especially at night. And so just reminding them like, I love you just because you're you. You don't have to do anything for me to love you. I just love you. And so the pressure of trying to be this like perfect firstborn, which I had no idea, that was completely unintentional on our part, was just making his stomach feel really crampy and tight, along with the anxiety of school and picking up everyone else's emotions. So here's how we really move through the anxiety piece and all of the anger and emotions and the perfectionism that came with it, because it's all very connected. I'm going to give you like the more concrete steps. So first, we set a boundary. And I had to set this boundary with my husband. We had to agree, what is our decision on when he can stay home and when he can't? And we decided you do not stay home unless you're truly not feeling good. Like if you have a fever, you have a really bad tummy ache, you have a headache, just really clearly not feeling well, you stay home. Outside of that, the expectation is you go to school. And we made that very clear with Hudson. Part of healing the anxiety piece is just setting up the day in a really intentional way. And this is something that as adults, people need to do more of as well, because I see a lot of people just like rushing into their day. And you really want to set up your day and their day in a really sacred way. I realized that we were all kind of trying to sleep into the last minute. And then we'd end up like rushing at the very end, like, hurry, come on, get your shoes on. We got to go. It's 7:15, that kind of vibe. Not ideal for setting up the day for anybody. So we really had to start getting up a little bit earlier for both. I started doing it. And then also for Hudson, we started getting him up earlier too. We set an intention for the day. So how do you want to feel today? Do you want to feel calm? Do you want to feel peaceful? Because this is great for adults too. When you set an intention for your day, your brain then filters your experience to look for that intention, like to look for proof that that intention is happening. So if he sets the intention that he wants to feel happy, he's going to notice more happy moments or more things that make him happy. So it's just like a really simple thing that we did. We also did energy protection, which I was already doing this, but what we realized is that through Michelle is that he needs to be involved in the energy protection because I can only do so much, even as his mom. I thought like, oh, as a mom, I can just handle it all. No, your kids need to be involved once they get to a certain age. And he was at an age where like he understood enough where he needed to start being involved. So every day I call in the white light of God source. I ask God to clear, cleanse Hudson of anything that isn't serving his highest and best, call back all his energy from his dream state. And then I call in a white light force field shield of divine protection from God's source around Hudson. And then I would ask Hudson, okay, what colors do you want to call in? Like, what colors do you want your shield to be, or what colors do you want in your energy? And then I'd let him kind of intuitively pick his colors. And then I'd ask him to visualize those colors too, because visualization is intention as well. At the end, we would say, Hudson will not accept or connect with any energy that is not his own unless it is of the highest light and love, and so it is. So that's just setting the intention. Any negative energy that comes your way, just boop, bounces right off. And if you're not doing this for yourself too, you need to be doing this. I have an everyday energy care course coming out towards the end of September, beginning of October. It's an hour of all of this information. It's for you and your families. Get on my newsletter if you want to be the first to know, because this is going to be powerful if you aren't already doing this kind of stuff. So we did the energy protection. And then one thing that Michelle mentioned is I needed to really kind of like ground him before the day began. And that it doesn't mean like go outside and put your feet on the earth for 5 minutes before school. Like we don't have time for that. But just kind of like ground him in and settle him. Since we were getting up earlier and I started doing more the night before instead of trying to do it all right before he left, I always make sure that I'm like sitting and snuggling him. I'm touching him a little bit. I always put my hands on his shoulders. That can feel really grounding. Hands on your heart space is also very grounding. So I'll kind of like go like this on his shoulders if you're watching on YouTube, kind of like grounding him, just calming him, and sort of running my hands down his arms. And then Michelle said, like, come up with a little rhyme or a little mantra that he can remember and come back to throughout the day. So ours was very silly. I'm sure you could come up with something better, but we would just say, today is the day to have a good day. You're gonna have a great day. Hey, hey. And then I'd be like, you got this, bud. You got this. You're gonna have such a good day. So just that was really, really helpful for him. Another thing that we started doing is I don't know why I wasn't doing this before, because in kindergarten they learn how to read. I should have done it when he started to learn how to read. But Michelle was like, he's really just missing home throughout the day. So how can you give him these little anchor points that kind of bring him your energy, like that space of home to him? She said, pick out a keychain, like maybe a few keychains, as sort of this anchor point throughout the day. So we picked out one keychain was symbolizing being brave. One keychain was symbolizing like happiness, and we put them on his backpack. I thought that was a really cute idea. Sometimes I would tell him he would pick out like a little tiny object, or we love crystals. So he'd have a little crystal and you put it in his pocket, and I'd be like, whenever you hold this, think of mommy and I'll be thinking of you too and sending you love. Or like, whenever you hold this, this is your happy crystal and you're just going to feel even happier. Things like that. And then on the way to school, I started driving him every day on the way to school, and I would play this playlist that I'm obsessed with. I've probably talked about it before. It's on Spotify. It's called Forest Bathing, and it's solfeggio frequencies mixed with nature sounds. It is so relaxing. He's obsessed with it. And so we'd play that on the way to school, just like really setting this calm tone. And it's funny because now when we carpool with our neighbor, I guess he started asking his mom, like, Mom, can you play that playlist that Miss Lyndsey plays? Because he really liked it too. But it's such a nice way to start the day. And then Michelle also said he needs to be reminded that there is an end point. Like, that school is not going to go on forever, that you'll be home at a certain time, and just remind him that so he can kind of have that in the back of his head. Before he got out of the car, I'd say, you are safe, you are loved. I'm sending so much love and so many prayers for you all day. I'm thinking of you, and I will see you at the bus at 2:30. And I would put that in his lunch notes as well. And I don't know why I wasn't doing lunch notes before, because once they're in kindergarten, they could read. I could have done something really simple like I heart you, like that would be really easy, or even just draw a picture if they can't read yet. But he really started to look forward to my lunch notes, which I added in, and I would write just a very positive, encouraging message on one side, and then the other side, I would try to draw like a funny picture or something to look forward to. And then I would always say, see you in 3 hours, because his lunch was about 3 hours before I would see him. Michelle also mentioned you could bake something together, which we haven't really done this, but I still think it's a really cute idea where you could bake something together, and then that is giving them the energy of home, and then you put it in their lunchbox. For Hudson, letting out his energy after school is really, really big. And especially, I think more so with boys, it's really, really important, but especially if they are exploding, like you need to mitigate that. They need to let out their energy in a different way. So we're lucky we have a trampoline. So I'll be like, go jump on the trampoline for 10 minutes, or just have the kids run around, jump up and down. If I notice they're really cranky and they don't seem to want to do anything, I'll just turn on like their favorite song and we'll have dance parties. That's a great way to move energy. One thing you can do too is you can just shake. This is a somatic thing. You can shake your hands or flick your fingers and do that with them. And that moves out stale energy. I really recommend starting this because these are all tools that they can use as they get older, even if they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. They're going to remember all this. And once they get into that like middle school, high school stage, this is going to be a game changer. I wish I had all these tools in my back pocket. My life would have been so different to understand all of this. So I'm so thankful that I get to share this with my kids. Also, we set the intention, and we do this with all the kids. So we get home, wash your hands, and then we say out loud as a family, I release any energy I picked up that is not mine. I call back all my power to me now. That alone is enough, just saying that out loud, setting that intention to let go of other people's energy. I really recommend doing this anytime you and your kids are around any big crowd, or like if you're around somebody that's like grumpy or like in a bad mood, just do that. You can also take it a step further. And as a family, you could do like a little visualization or a little meditation, make it a game, but just visualize white or golden or both, white, golden light shining down on you, and just a pillar of light coming down all over your body and just pushing out, clearing, cleansing you of anything that feels heavy and just filling you up with high vibrational energy. Kids are so good at visualizing, so I really recommend this kind of stuff. They're like games for them. And again, this will stick as they get older. Some other things for Hudson that may or may not resonate for you, but if you have a boy, they probably will. So for him, getting his homework done right away, so it doesn't start to feel heavy, and so he can just be like, okay, it's fun time, which at our school, we don't have homework till 3rd grade, but they do send home some little like worksheets and like optional things that you can do. So just getting that done right away, so it's not like sitting there feeling heavy. And then allowing him to play really aggressively was important. I actually got him a punching bag. I do encourage him. I'm like, jump it out, punch a pillow if you're frustrated. I tell him that all the time because he is, if you know astrology, he's an Aries moon. He is a firecracker emotionally. So this is really important. And also Aries moons, they need that like activity outlet. Another amazing, amazing piece of advice. This is like one of my favorite things that I learned. He was getting a lot of his pride from me and my husband, which kids do, right? Like we're building up their confidence when they're little, but it was really important for him to let him just experiment and do things that are, quote, dangerous, within limits, like climbing and just kind of like things that will push his limits. We have a creek in our backyard, so like going across the pipe on the creek, things like that. Doing things where he can kind of take a risk. One, it actually helps him decompress, we learned. But two, it's like letting him trial, fail, experiment is really beneficial. But also, three things. It also brings him a sense of pride because when he kind of pushes and tests his limits and he does the thing, he's getting pride and confidence all from himself versus from us. So that made a lot of sense. And that was like very, very Hudson. And then we'll do like obstacle courses. My kids love that. That's a good way to get that extra energy and stress out. I I even got a baseball glove for myself. Never played baseball in my life. I mean, anything active for him is huge. Another thing for really my whole family is nature. Being in the sunlight, the smell of trees and the sound of birds alone is so healing. There's actual data on this now. And then just this is sort of like a meditation trick, but you can have them notice all the beautiful things in nature. Like take a nature walk, have them, what are you hearing? What do you see? What are five beautiful things that you see? And this is really, really, really good for calming down the nervous system. Now, going back to the perfectionism component, I've got some notes here. His subconscious really needs acknowledgement that we love him no matter what. Like I told you, that little rhyme we do, I love you when you're happy, I love you when you're sad. That it's okay and also very normal for everyone to have bad days. And we want him to express his emotions and never hold them in. And we give him the freedom to express them. So we had to kind of say that out loud. What we found out is that what was coming off as this like rage anger is really just like pent up emotion, yes, from like other people, but also feeling inside like a little sad and embarrassed because he's just like trying to be perfect and trying to make everyone happy. So reminding him how important it is to just be who you came here to be. You're not here to be anyone else. You're here to be Hudson. And you're not here to be your friend. Like you are here to be you and they're going to love you for you. So be true to yourself and be honest. And I always say, like, we're not for everyone. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. You're not supposed to be. And that it's okay to make mistakes. It's very normal to make mistakes. Normalizing the mistakes. Like I said, sharing when you make a mistake or something embarrassing happens to you. Also going a step further, like, here's how I felt when it happened, and then here's how I handled it, and here's how I let it go. Perfection tolerance was something that Dr. Puff introduced me to that I never heard. So this is something she does with her clients. She said, perfectionist kids have the hardest time with this, but it's so good for them. Draw a picture and then purposely mess it up. Or draw a picture of like a tree, but make it red and like purple. You know, make it the colors it's not supposed to be. That helps them actually build their tolerance for perfectionism and messing things up. And there's a really beautiful book that Hudson actually told me about from his art class that I just bought. It's called Beautiful Oops. It's just a little board book, but it's basically about letting go of perfectionism. And on every page, it shows like somebody made a mistake, but then here's the art that that mistake turned into. It's a really, really good book for kids. I highly recommend. Also, giving space for your child to make mistakes is so important, especially with the firstborn. It can be so easy to jump on them like, oh, they should have known better. Come on, Hudson, why'd you like do that thing? Like, you know better. But we really need to give them space. And it's really hard too, because if you're here, you probably have an old soul child too. You can expect a lot from your child because you forget how little they are. Because sometimes you talk to them and you're like, wow, you're so wise. And they are, but they're also so little. They're also still learning in their human. So just giving them space to make mistakes and not making mistakes a big deal. Just being like, oopsie, we'll clean it up. It's okay. You know, just letting things go. That's going to really help if you have a perfectionist child. A few other things I wanted to share. Perspective is so important and mindset. And this is one of the things I personally work on with my mentorship and coaching clients. But I do believe that part of the reason my mindset is what it is because my mom is very much like a glass half full kind of gal. She's always been super, super positive, and she really instilled that in us as children. I'm doing the same with my kids, and sometimes we'll start the day. A gratitude practice is a game changer. It's like such a easy thing to do, but so many people don't do it. Whenever I'm feeling like I'm going into a slump, I start making a gratitude list every day. 3 things that I'm grateful for in my phone. And so sometimes we'll start the day or we'll end the day with the kids by naming 3 things we're grateful for. Again, this is brain training. So that actually trains their brain to look for what they're grateful for throughout the day. And we often talk about when something that could be viewed as bad happens, like, oh, this thing happened and it really upset you. But like, what lesson do you think you learned here? When they're ready, like when they're in that moment, when they're feeling all their feels, not the time. But later you can be like, what do you think the lesson was in that? Or like, what did you learn from that? Instilling growth mindset is huge for confidence and resilience. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we are always sending our children the right energy. And it can be really, really hard when you're in a situation like this to not send out that like worrying signal, that worrying energy, that anxious energy about how your child's day is going and what's going on. But we really want to send them strength. We really want to remind them, like, you are so strong. You are such a powerful kid. You got this. And just kind of pump them up in that way, because the way we speak to them becomes their self-talk. So that is what I have for you. Wow, this ended up being a long episode. I would love to hear how this helps you in any way. Please send this to anyone that you feel like it would help. And then be on the lookout for this school anxiety meditation that I just created, that'll be free on YouTube and all the podcast platforms in the next week or so. And yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the High Vibe Soul podcast. Your support means the world to me. So if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with a loved one. Sign up for my newsletter and receive 2 free high vibe meditations straight to your inbox. And for more ways to work with me, click the links in the show notes. I would love to hear from you, so send me a message on my Instagram at the.highvibe.soul, and I'll see you next time.